teissTalk, the live webinar with no presentations, no PowerPoint, just talk.
Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are joining us, and welcome one and all to this week's Star Wars Lisp Day of the teissTalk. That's May the 4th to all of you who don't really get that. Thank you to the Teiss Goblin for popping that one in. So welcome to the show, everybody. We've got a cracking one for you today, talking about SaaS applications, rogue insiders, imposters, all the really good words that we like to hear within a security briefing. As always, I am your host, Tom Langford, and I am also the judge of the best question competition to win a Teiss mug. It's beautifully made, as you can tell. You have to drink it a little bit awkwardly if you want people to see where you're drinking from, but otherwise a superb mug to win. Lots and lots of people vie for these. It has been confirmed on LinkedIn. People even have competitions apparently to get as many as they can. So up in your browser, up on the top right of your screen, you will see the Q&A tab. So if you do have a question for us during today, could really be about anything, to be honest with you. It doesn't even have to be about the show. We've had questions about beards, for instance. But you may well be in the run-in to win a Teiss mug. We've even awarded up to 2. I see we already have a disappointed member of the audience who's still waiting for their mug. Trust me, it will come, John. Don't worry. It will be on its way if it's not already. So without further ado, you've all been briefed, you know where the fire exits are. I'd like to bring onto stage today's guests. We have Todd, Aderonke, and Adam. Please come onto stage. Hello, Adam.
Hey, Tom. How are you doing?
Great. Very good, thank you. Hello, Todd.
Hello, Tom.
And hello, Aderonke. How are we?
I'm good, thank you.
Jolly good. Glad to see you all. And thank you for joining us today. Thank you for joining us. So let's jump straight in, shall we? Let's get cracking onto the news story that we've got for you, which comes courtesy of the very aptly named Security Magazine. The headline is 31% of former employees still have company SaaS access. That's a bit shocking. And also, actually, I'm going to ask the question, the basic question. Why is securing SaaS applications so difficult? It's the same as everything else, right? So why is this figure so high?
I mean,
go on, Adam. Go on, jump in.
You think it's the same as everything? Todd's cracking up. I mean, this is the shared responsibility models in SaaS apps and different integration points for access and control is mind-bogglingly complex, right? They're all different.
Really? Like add user, delete user? I mean...
That's at scale, tied into HR systems? Come on. No.
Well, that's what we have enterprise systems for, right? I mean, if they can manage it internally, I mean, we'd be even more shocked if we were talking about 31% of employees still have access to systems after they leave, to internal systems. Surely this, if you're going to use SaaS, you must know what you're getting in for.
Absolutely.
Aderonke, go on.
Yeah, absolutely, you're right. One fundamental thing that I feel is wrong is it's not just enough to do the correct thing, that is, you do the due care, but doing the continuous and maintenance of what you're expected to do as a security personnel is the most important thing. If you're to put, antivirus, or you're to patch the software that was integrated or something, it's not just enough doing that, but the continuous process of going over, scoping and tailoring is what is important. And I think a lot of times security personnel, they just take it with levity and they felt, okay, that's cool, then let me just leave it. But security is not like that.
So do you think that the security function are the ones that are at fault here?
Yeah, because I feel if there is, like you said the other time, that you think it should be simple, add user, delete user. If there is constant scoping and tailoring, you review data constantly, you review the labeling, the classification, you know who has access, who should not have access, then everything would be fine. And then seriously, it's really appalling to have about 31% of former employees. So what happens to the proper security onboarding when employees were coming in? Is there no policy? What about procedures? So it's like you being in the house and saying somebody left your house yesterday and still has some things kept with him.
So it's a bit like the phrase of, you must be this tall to ride the internet, right? You've got to have a certain level of maturity. And if you've reached the level of maturity that you can use SaaS applications, should it then follow that you have the maturity to manage said applications?
I don't know. I think Todd.
I'm gonna chime in here on some of this. Let's just start with number one. Is most of many applications are completely unknown to the security team. Period. They're just shadow IT, different departments doing these SaaS applications all over the place, and there's no visibility on some of this.
Yeah.
That's number one. So you have significant hidden estate out here, and those are definitely not part of even doing single sign-on. Okay. So clearly these applications that we're referring to that are out there, a lot of these do not have single sign-ons. And I'm willing to bet when you look at the leaving process, it does not say in the leaving process, hey, we've got these 1,000 apps that need to be turned off for these employees. So there's a complete gap missing from this. And
there's no way. Think about, I know that like when I left my last company, right? Like I absolutely still had not single sign-on enabled SaaS apps that I had signed up for at some point in the last 5-6 years before I left, right? That absolutely had company IP in them that someone else was adminning. And the reality is like there is no good way, especially like I'm saying, like the shared responsibility models, plus also people can just go sign up for free trials or cheap trials and just expense stuff, right? That it's impossible to hold security responsible for this because they don't know about it.
We seem to need to raise the rider height for this particular, the internet ride and the SaaS ride, right? Because people are just using it without thought, without consequence, and without even company authorization.
Yeah, a lot of times this has to go back to the procurement process too. Why is this product being bought without going through a security channel in the first place? And sometimes these aren't going through procurement even. They're ad hoc departments putting on their credit card or who knows what it might be. Yeah. And then they come back and they're like, well, we have a security issue for something we didn't know existed. Certainly wasn't on our vulnerability scanning. And then what do you do?
Yeah, Tom, I'd actually put it back on you, Tom. It's not a matter of like, they're not mature enough to use SaaS, right? Like the idea is that back in the day, you'd have to have someone agree to go buy hardware to run something. You had a much more rigorous approval process. You had a vendor management process. You had CISO sign off because you're putting hardware in your data center. Now I can just go sign up for a free trial. No one knows I'm doing this and putting our IP in the cloud in some possible unknown SaaS app.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, as you can tell, we've got a number of grey hairs and no hairs here already. So, but I think I remember the day when a company credit card meant you went straight down to PC World or Staples or whatever and bought a server, by which I mean a compact desktop, and stuck it under your desk and ran everything. So the principles are still there. It's the same principles. Scale, I totally appreciate, is very different. We address that. We address that through, network segregation and discovery and all that sort of thing. Surely this is a similar challenge.
I think that when you move to the cloud, it's all gone. You lose network segmentation. You lose all your defense in depth.
Yeah. Aderonke, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I'm still really trying to picture the scenario, especially what Adam mentioned, that maybe you just get to buy a security item and then or infrastructure without going through the proper procedure. Personally, I feel if everybody that is in a critical infrastructure setup, they wouldn't do anything just anyhow. I mean, you got to go through the control management process. There are standards. And sincerely, I feel if standards and procedures, guidelines, baselines will be followed, like simple security hygiene will achieve a lot. Obviously, a lot of times we may not be able to beat those guys. You understand what I'm saying? But we will know that from the security personnel, from her end, we have tied up everything that should be done properly. I still feel simple, basic things that are left out, they are very, very important in keeping those things secure and our infrastructure and assets.
I do have to reference a comment in the chat. I very rarely look at these because I'm just focusing on the Q&A. Chris Atkinson, 2 comments here. A similar percentage of current employees message me daily with their failure to access current SaaS apps. But it seems our former employees are better at remembering their passwords than we gave them credit for. It's a little bit of a... It's true though, right? How come they remember them when you were employed with us? You couldn't remember it from day to day. So, and another comment from Chris as well. Chris, you might not be going for a Q&A mug, but I think you might be going for a comment mug today. It is also World Password Day, people. Whatever the SaaS app and whatever the status of the current former employee, we've got to do better. Well, there's us told, I think. And I think, to Aderonke's point, right, we've got to do better as a profession on how we manage this. Although, in fairness, it probably isn't down to the security folks per se in many cases.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I think, what you're going for with the have to do better and how it falls down to different processes. I'd say, Todd, in your capacity as a CISO, you absolutely have had business owners bring SaaS apps in that you maybe did not get the ability to do a due diligence check on that you'd have been satisfied with, and you're just told like, okay, we're going to use this now. And then you're playing catch up, trying to figure out what your visibility and prevention or detection capabilities would even be at that point, right?
The risk here is it's also another key risk is people purchasing these solutions without doing a proper data analysis of what data is being kept there, PII and stuff like that, and they get caught out, and they haven't done a proper security. Like there's some SaaS organizations we have no business ever doing business with. Their security posture is so awful. You would reject it on the security team. But
name and shame, Todd. Name and shame.
Well, I sure hope no one here is a T-Mobile customer for starters.
That cuts deep.
Well, it's true, and actually, why would they? Because in fairness to many, virtually all employees, right, their intentions are always good. It's rare that their intentions are malicious in situations like this. The client needs it. The current IT systems are not capable of delivering the services that they need or the features that they need. It's a particular project requirement to work with a partner, blah, blah, blah. There's a variety of reasons. It's like having the old USB keys. I say old USB keys, God. But it's that principle, right? Nobody uses a USB key maliciously. Statistically, nobody uses a USB maliciously, right? They use it because it's convenient and they need to get the data somewhere, or they need to move it, or they want to make sure they've got it else, a backup or something like that. But it's a horrible, horrible risk to have to run. And if the solution, like USB sticks, is to just switch off your USB, and not give an alternative, they'll work something else out.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I would, you're right. I would say of all of the people who are signing up for these SaaS apps, possibly, under the radar or whatever, it's almost never malicious, right? Like to be clear, like the actual threat of an insider, right? At RSA, someone told me, this stat, and I don't know how true this is, right? Like all stats, who knows, right? But
lies, and statistics.
Yeah. But from a risk modeling of insider perspective, and this came from a retailer talking about people who work in his shops, right? 20% of his employees will never steal from him. 60% might in the right circumstances, and 20 will always steal from him no matter what, right?
Wow.
And the thing is, when you're talking about the actual intent of insiders signing up for these SaaS apps, right? I'm in the good 20%. I wouldn't steal from my employer, but I've absolutely signed up for SaaS apps under the radar to get something done for a client or to get a project done that needed to be done, right?
So you weren't the criminal, but you were a party to an offense.
Yeah, well, yeah, we'll say no, but I mean, signing up for an AWS account with my credit card and then expensing it afterwards. That had some project that had to get done, right? And it was critical to the success of my startup at the time. Absolutely. Like the CEO and the COO said, yeah, go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Right. Because
any wonder we look like this?
Yeah. Right.
It's worth bringing the note on this. You brought up an interesting point, Tom. I've seen situations where if an organization is too rigid on security controls, too tight, as an example, you will find that people will circumvent those because they have to get on with the business. They're under a lot of pressure to get their jobs done. And all of a sudden, you know what? They're just going to do it. They're going to circumvent these controls. And it says a lot about your security controls in the sense that if it's not designed for business use and people are circumventing that, that says a lot. And it's something you might have to revisit in terms of how you think about your security posture and have that in consideration, because you don't want to be a roadblocker in business.
Yeah, I mean, well, Todd, I mean, do you want to be a cost center CISO or a business enabling CISO, right?
Yeah,
that's the trick, right?
And one carries a lot more risk than the other.
Yes, definitely.
So let's segue across onto the panel. In the meantime, Mr. Atkinson has just put himself out of the race for a mug. He's already got one. So come on, Chris, your schoolboy mistake there.
Tom, I expect one because all I have is this.
You haven't got one. Come on. I think the Tice Goblin needs to sort something out. So let's segue onto the panel, shall we? Entitled Detecting Imposters and Rogue Insiders in SaaS Applications. So we've talked about, up till now, we've talked about the fact that there is a problem and there are people who have access that they shouldn't. And there's some very, very good reasons why that happens, and some very, very good reasons why why it's difficult to deal with it, right? So, but let's move on to the actual impacts of when it happens. Okay, it's happened, but when it happens. So, we've got stolen credentials potentially, and they're stolen not potentially maliciously in this instance, but they're stolen because by the mere fact that it's an ex-employee who has the credentials. How do we do that? I mean, for a start, how do we even find out that 31% of our credentials are out there, as users, when we don't even know that we've got these applications in the first place? How do we even start ascertaining these figures?
I guess, if there are many solutions on the market today, right, that you can hook up to, I guess to give you like, there's probably like a maturity path here, right? So first is discovery, right? Discovering the shadow IT, right? Mm-hmm. So there are solutions in the market now that you can put on your corporate network that will look for traffic to SaaS apps, and then identify which ones are being used in your environment, right?
So they'll reveal something.
Yeah, well, like I think there's a few that are they're not like SSBMs for like posture management, because like you don't necessarily have the posture yet to even know what it is. But there are other things that will like discover, you're using Box and you didn't realize that or something, right? They'll give you a report on that. So I guess, Todd, like to your point, right? You don't have visibility. So first is figuring out what's even being used in your environment, right? Then, you have to figure out like, okay, what do I do with that information? Is that logging anywhere? Do they even have logs? Can I kick this thing out now, or is it business critical or whatever? Make that determination. right? And then you have to go into the business of detecting stuff, right? Because detecting stuff means is after discovery, right?
Yeah.
Adronke, go on.
Yeah. I'll take it on from there that detecting stuff is after discovery. Then what are those things you're looking for? I mean, those points should be listed out. What are the features and characteristics of what the behavior, the signatures that you know, okay, when you have this particular house, then this is what I'm looking for, or this is not part of what has been established to be in the application or in the CM or in the environment in the system. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Mm. So, but it sounds like we have to spend money to find out something that we shouldn't have to find out in the first place. That'd be accurate to say?
That's a good point, because budget is constrained in security palace. And then would that mean that there is no proper risk management assessment? Because if at the end of the day, you're supposed to have step A, get all the assessment done, get the risk factors established, and it's on point C, then you now have to go back again to point A and start to see that you need to get infrastructure and get this thing restructured again. They really posed a lot of questions, and I've been thinking, okay, so what should be the proper procedure? And honestly, from my perspective, I feel if standards, AUP, the normal change control, change management processes, if these things will be followed, like NIST 853, ISO 27002, if all these guidelines, RMF 37, NIST 837, they have policies, they have guidelines, and that is what is expected of, like you were talking about maturity, in a particular CM or for a particular MSP or whoever that is handling that particular infrastructure or service. It is very, very important that we take this thing into consideration. I believe that's my posture. I may be wrong. I may be corrected. I am not in the main sector of security practice. I mean, in the industry, but I feel if these guidelines would be as laid down, would be followed, because I've gone through some of these standards, I've gone through some of these NIST publications, and this time around we're talking about the ZTA, which is the Zero Trust Architecture. If you're going to follow that, and that is what is expected in 2023 predictions of cybersecurity towards 2025, 2030. So if infrastructure, endpoints, and every other thing that would be in the network environment, either the DMC or the trusted network, would be properly guided, I'm sure some of these things will be reduced. And a lot of headaches, a lot of stress that are put on CISO, like HEDAM and maybe Todd, and everybody will be in a quite relaxed mood a bit, and then things will be better. I mean, mental issues, a lot of things. Sorry, I'm really, really saying so much.
That's right.
Because security personnel, they are stressed out. You understand? You need to monitor, dictate. Something is happening there. Okay, what are you doing about it? Maybe Adam has delegated, Todd has delegated. Who is doing what and who is not doing what? So all these headaches, put together, and then the hackers, they leverage on that vulnerability, they leverage on the gap, and then something happened. Reputation is lost. You have to start all over again. Somehow, I mean, something just has to be done properly. Thank you.
No, of course. It'd be great if everyone followed everything and ZTA was implemented everywhere. I just think, from the standpoint of, let's put this back, right? Like if in order for you to implement ZTA and everything else properly, right? Back to Todd's point, you need the logs. You need to know what the things even exist to lock them down, right? And I think the reality is, like, people aren't going to, it's such a challenge, the from a resources perspective, Tom, like, you're saying, how do you do this? Right now, the way people are doing it, right, is the large financials, for example, like someone who just became a CISO of a large financial I know immediately start hiring data scientists, right? Because the classical way of trying to solve these types of detection problems, right, is writing rules. And how do you write rules for things you don't understand and don't know? the people in the SOC aren't business experts, for every line of business. They don't know all the different business policies and processes of the organization, all the applications of the organization.
Or even what's a good M365 account versus an unauthorized M365 account.
Or if they're doing something that's okay or not, because all you can do is write rules for things right? You can write rules about the known bad things, right? But you can't write rules about the known good things, because there's all kinds of other things that are good or innocuous and perfectly reasonable. So you can't do allow versus deny. It has to be just trying to find the denies or the malicious things and hoping for the best.
There's another element to add to this, and there's an awareness activity here, because sometimes people just genuinely don't know. They just don't know it's wrong, and they don't, to them they don't even think about the security aspect. They're just getting on with their job. Yeah. And so there's an awareness activity you have to do to bring this, educate people and to bring this to life on the risk and the right steps, but really articulate, the harm it can damage, by following this, and really bring that to life in these awareness activities for individuals.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Yeah.
Do go on, Aderonke, do go on.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Okay, so how often should, and Todd mentioned that, how often should training come up for different sector in a particular organization? Is it monthly, quarterly, or what should it be? And I wanted to get maybe us to speak in that direction. That how often should it be? What should be the trigger? What should be the sign that, okay, this particular set of people at this point in time needs to be trained, or they need security awareness?
I mean, I don't know. I think we already have, there already are standards, right? For example, like we're SOC 2 Type 2 compliant, right? So we have to have yearly security training. And in other organizations I've been in, it was similar, right? We had yearly, we had some things were quarterly, but I think the reality is, you're not going to train your way out of this, right? I think that for the same reasons that people who work in a SOC are not business experts, right? Like for example, even looking at security versus compliance. Like one of my friends is a QSA, right? He's an auditor. He's been an auditor and now he's a compliance expert. He and I can be sitting at a table, having a conversation using the same words, and we mean different things and have radically different viewpoints of what's important, why it's important, or whatever, right? From a security standpoint, I'm sitting there, from the we must lock everything down as much as possible, blah, 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 like make this 10,000 inch thick armor or whatever for everything. And from his standpoint, it's like, no, it's about scope, about scope and
scope is a CISO's favorite word.
Right. So about scope, it's about business impact, which is this times this minus that, and the idea is telling him, that making him go through SANS training every year. Okay, fine, but that's not changing his viewpoint or his job, right? So you go talk to somebody in one of your lines of business that's covering something like mortgage-backed securities, right? The way that they think about things is not the way that we think about things, right? And training them on not opening phishing emails. Yeah, we should do that. But there's nothing that we're going to do is going to make them change the viewpoint to think about security as to Alan's point, right? Enabling business versus slowing down business.
Yeah.
Right?
I think I want to pick up on that. We can't train our way out of this, which I think is a really good point. Training helps, or at least awareness and education of policies. It helps, but we're not going to train it out to people. And there's a really good comment here from Sarah, who's now winning the mug competition, even though it's not a question. I'd be interested too if things are different between companies where employees think of security as enabling business versus employees that think of security as blocking how to do their jobs. What I'm taking from that is culture. Yeah. What is the company culture, or what is the security culture of said company? And I think that's got to be a key element in this throughout the conversation of how do we stop? How do we address this insider threat, malicious or otherwise?
Yeah, I think Alan's got a great point. internal phishing tests to reinforce negative view of security, because you get named and shamed. It goes in your employee file.
If you do poor implementations of phishing tests, internal phishing tests.
Well, did you see there was the one? There was one, I want to say it was last year or the year before, where
there's so many.
It was the gift card one, where it was like, coming from the head of HR or something. We really appreciate all your hard work. Here's a $100 gift card. And like employees like, what? Or it was and then everyone got in trouble, and it's like, well, you just yanked them out from under. Like, what do you do?
Yeah. Hey, the company does care for me. I mean, then again, there's an argument that says that, tests like the one that said you're all getting bonuses this year. Click here to log in and confirm receipt of your bonus and things like that. So, Todd,
there's awareness activities, phishing activities, and yet our cyber crime, it just escalates. Clearly, it is not the solution. But there is some really interesting innovation in this sector. And one of the couple of innovative ideas I've talked to some startups recently is one is doing continual social engineering tests against the company, ongoing, 5-6 days a month, and actually going through successfully doing social engineering and then going in and training the staff. Now, you can go ahead and go through an awareness training once a year, but when you get caught out and they teach you and you've actually been a victim of some of these attacks, in the testing environment, they're powerful, because social engineering is way more than just some phishing email you're going to get.
Say, is this not the same as a phishing email? Or
not even close. Not even close. Like, people are calling you up. People are doing directed attacks, text messaging you. People are...
No, absolutely. But in principle, that you're being asked to click a link or to say a word or whatever.
No, you can get like text messages asking. It's.
I know that. Yeah. I know, but in principle, it's the same. That they're trying to get you to do something against the interest of your company by tricking you, by making you feel like the company's doing something. Doing something good or whatever. How is it so different?
Yeah, I think.
I don't care.
Yeah, Gartner in the cybersecurity predictions gave about 91% of phishing attacks starting all the breaches that have been, experienced in the last 5 years or so. So, like Todd said, SC, which is engineering, that's why sometimes I think this cognitive cybersecurity, I wouldn't really know its position and how it will fit into the industry or the academia to actually see the psychology behind the social engineering. It always winning the game. And that's where we'll need experts to come, probably will come up with solutions to see how this menace could be reduced, mitigated.
Just one small example, the recent GoDaddy hack where they gained access to GoDaddy system. Krebs did a research on this. 2 employees received phone calls that were tricked into giving their username and passwords and their one-time passwords over the phone to these attackers. And when you are in that heat of the moment, where you are initially in an emotional state, like in that few seconds, that's hard to get across in an awareness activity. You can't, but when you get a testing attack coming against you, it kind of trains you for this. And so these employees clearly were not anywhere near adept to recognizing these attacks. Clearly, there are some controls of problem as well on GoDaddy's side, but it's just an example of that it was just too easy for them.
So I guess, like, going back to how do we detect these things, right? Like, what do we do about this, right? So, CISOs have to assume breach, right? And you have to assume that there are people in your apps or your network that are doing things that you don't want them to do or have access, right? So, okay, we're assuming breach now because, people are going to get in, right? Whether they're nation state, APTs, or it's, someone selling their access in a call center or something, or to the whatever. Like, it kind of goes back to the, like, what do you do about it, right? And, if you're, I think there was some report I saw, I think like Better Cloud put it out, that like when you get over 1,000 employees, the number of SaaS apps in the environment is like 130 or something.
What? Really?
Yeah, yeah, because you have, think about this. You have all the big ones, right? Then you have all the little ones people sign up for, all the different instances of all the different things you sign up for, right? So like as we've gone, as the digital transformations continued, right? We went from you're responsible as CISO for physical security of a data center, who has access to that, the cameras and everything, all the way up to coding, secure coding standards and access controls, right? And the network layer and the endpoints. To now, we have many different point solutions in SaaS environments that you may or may not have visibility into or know about, and you may or may not be collecting logs for. And every different vendor has their own shared responsibility model. So, like for example, Salesforce, right? If you look at Salesforce's best practices guide for security, one of the items there is turn on audit logging. Okay, that's it. There's an implication there, right? Because they're not doing anything with the audit logging. So they're telling you to turn it on. So they're telling you now that the implication is that now you're storing it and doing something with it, right?
And paying for it to be stored.
And paying for it to be stored and paying for the event monitoring feature in Shield, right? But the thing is, that's your contract. If your company is going to use Salesforce, right, you as CISO need to do that, right? And the thing is that when that's being budgeted and allocated by the business owners, are they thinking about the extra costs associated with not only turning on that feature, storing those logs in Splunk or somewhere very expensive, but also the resources required to actually do something with those logs, since now you're on the hook, for malicious activities inside of Salesforce, Yeah.
Yeah. So let's move on to the final stage here. We've got the closing sort of 4 or 5 minutes or so. Allocating resources to this. I think I picked up on a point earlier. It seems like we have to pay somebody to tell us things about our system that, one, we should know already but can't know, and two, we shouldn't have to do in the first place anyway. So allocating resource to this feels like a bit of a double kick in the teeth, as it were. And I can imagine boards saying, "Why don't you know this anyway? This is your bag. Why do you not know it?" How do we do that? How do we actually get money to do this, and then actually, I'm sure it can be done without getting someone in, but there's a vast amount of data to sift through, right? So where do we even start?
Well, I mean, go ahead, Todd, please.
This is a risk-based discussion. You need to articulate these risks. You need to put a financial amount to these risks and bring this to life to your exco, to board. This is the conversation you have to have. These are very serious risks at play for this organization, and you have to frame it in a way that they will understand what's going to happen if these risks materialize. And this is how you would go ahead and get the budget for what you need and solutions. And then it's up to them to decide, is this risk they want to accept? Is this risk they want to, mitigate? But it's your job as a CISO or head of security really need to articulate this to the exco so they can make an informed decision.
Well, so that's a good point, right? So one of the things that we've seen, right, is part of the challenge, right, with getting resources for this is over the last 10 years, companies have bought many security products that claim to be able to do a lot of the detection we're talking about from a SaaS app perspective, right? But then they've had to hire a ton of people to care and feed for those technologies, right? So like we have one of our clients, she's CISO of an insurance company. She has like the Splunk UEBA component, right? And she has 4 FTEs whose only job is to write rules for the Splunk UEBA component and then follow up on all the alerts she gets. She gets 300 to 400 alerts a week, and only 3 to 4 of them are actually like not false positives, right? And that's the thing is now she has all that extra cost associated with the fact that they made the investment and decided that it was not worth the risk. It had to be taken care of. Right.
That's a great podcast idea. Bad security decisions.
Yeah. Someone's got to be doing that already, right?
I think somebody actually has done it, and I can't remember, but I'm sure there is one about that. I mean, that's a podcast that's got material for the rest of someone's natural life.
Yeah, absolutely.
I could add a few in there as well, actually.
Absolutely.
All right.
So when we talk about risk, what kind of you're saying we need to articulate risk, and I, one, I agree, but two, articulate risk. I mean, the risk. How do you not monetize the risk? How do you make that 31% that we mentioned before? How do we turn that into a realistic risk and a financial figure that stand up and listen, or sit up and listen?
Well, start with the risk assessment for starters. You can also articulate that, and depending on which SaaS, I mean, you could definitely explore which SaaS applications have been discovered. Okay, so you can definitely do some homework on that. Find out who is it. Find out if it's critical PII, because this will definitely add to the losses, the breach on this data. You could definitely, there's metrics you can use for this. If you could calculate the amount of data in these, calculate kind of, you can put some numbers to this and say, look, this is the risk we're looking at. This is what you're looking at. But once you realize you have a problem, then I think you can start to get a handle on who is responsible, which SaaS apps are out there, what kind of data is on these applications, and bring that to life.
Yeah, I think there's also just the risk of, once you do that, right, it's understanding, like risk modeling is hard, right? Also because people don't realize what their actual attack vectors are, and people don't have a realistic view of who their opponents are, right? For example, like back in previous places, it used to be an EDR company, and we had people all the time who could not actually benefit from a real EDR because they weren't going to be attacked by anyone who's doing living off the land type things. They just need really good AV and really good basic firewall policies, because the reality is, like, nation states aren't burning 0 days on them, on their domain controllers, right? So understanding the actual risks, being able to communicate that, right? And that's, I think, where Tyler, you're saying, right, is understanding what's our business risk of this SaaS app being breached by somebody, right? Is there IP involved? Is there, PII, the different aspects there? And then from there, being able to quantify that and turn that into, again, tied back to the insurance or payouts from somewhere else, and figuring out the actual dollar figures tied to the risk. Sorry, the pound figure, the risk.
I felt, okay, maybe DeFi technique could be added to that as well, where you get experts to come in and they quickly get a rough estimate of what the risk factors or the attack vectors could be, and then you check against the risk matrix, and then you're able to proceed. Okay, then project. If you do this, it's possible we get this, and at the end of the day, you're able to accept, share, or whatever with the risk at the end of whatever that is come out of the hybrid technique. I think that's going to be a long way to help the quantification of the risk.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we've come to a
executive.
Sorry, Aderonke, I cut you off there. I think we've come to a close there. Thank you all very much. I'm going to give you all 10 seconds, as I said I would. What's the one thing, when people get back to their desk tomorrow morning, what's the one thing they can do that's going to help them in this space? And Aderonke, I'm going to ask you to go first.
Oh, okay. I just say be proactive, do correct, and do maintain.
Todd?
I think you need to understand why this is happening. You need to investigate the why.
Yeah.
And really think about why. Get to the root cause of what might be causing this.
Yeah. And Adam?
I think it's critical that people, kind of ideate around how to enable their businesses better so that they have more cooperation as SaaS is more adopted across organizations.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you, Aderonke. Thank you, Todd. And also thank you, Adam, who is also our sponsor today. So tea and biscuits were courtesy of Adam from Reveal Security today. Thank you all. It just remains for me to announce the mug winner. Now, I'm only going to say this. I'm only going to do this once. Normally, you have to ask a question to get a mug. So let's not have this happen again next week, okay? But I am going to give a mug for the best comment to Sarah Templey and not Chris Atkinson because he gave the game away. So, Sarah, congratulations. Make sure you leave your details or contact our Tice Goblin with your details so that you can come on next week and complain that you haven't got your mug either. In the meantime, I would like to remind you of next week's show, which is on the evolving role of identity in cybersecurity. That's next Thursday, the 11th of May. And also remind you of the TICE R3 conference, which is Resilience, Response and Recovery, which is on the 26th of September this year. It's an all-day event. Look forward to seeing you there. So once again, thank you very much to our panelists, Todd, Aderonke, and Adam. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks.
And thank you all. Have a great day and stay secure, my friends.